Good evening.
All right.
All right. Um, okay, good evening, everyone. We're living in dark times, so let's use some Rambam as some Nachama. We left off, we had a Haskalah Monday. We were talking about how the Rambam began his magnum opus with basically the incontrovertible fact that there is only one supreme being, and without him, nothing else exists. And in the first, second, and third halacha, he kind of uses that motif where he it's a little repetitive, but in the second one, in halacha beis, he said, and if you think that God doesn't exist, then nothing else exists, right? This is like one of those. This is one of these logic puzzles. So if there's no God, then there's nothing else. And in the third halacha, Gimel, and if you think that, again, no God, then there's no rest. But if you think that there's no rest, okay, God, could still exist. It's still possible for God to be there with nothing else there, like it was in moment one. And basically, the Rambam is saying that the bitul of the rest of the world's existence doesn't necessarily mean that God is batel. Okay? So again, if no God, then it's not possible to have anything else. But on the other hand, if there is nothing else, there's still a possibility that God himself exists like it was in the beginning. And just because nothing else exists, that doesn't mean that God can't exist by himself. Because everybody, the whole world needs from God. But God doesn't need them. This is right. This sounds like one of those paradoxes, but like if you want to think about it, it's kind of like a mother carrying a baby inside. The mother could exist without the baby, but the baby can't exist without the mother, right? So that's the basic comparison I will offer between the way the Rambam describes the existence of God versus everything else that's in existence. Right? Again, Shakol Hadim Tzrichin Lo, V'hu Baruch Hu Ein Tzarich Lahem, V'lo Echad Mehem. He doesn't need all of them. God could be perfectly okay with Tohu Vavohu. And maybe in today's times that may be better. Sorry about that. Lefichach Ein Amitaso Ka'amitas Echad Mehen. So the Rambam concludes Halacha Gimel by saying, therefore, his existence does not, or his amitaso, the word like emes la amito, it means his emes, his truth of his existence is not like any other truth. It doesn't resemble anything else that's on this world. Okay, so that's halacha gimel. Hu shahnavi omer, and in halacha dalid, he goes on to say, and he says, this is what the Navi in Yirmiyahu, the 10th parak says, V'Hashem Elokim emes. Okay, your God is emes. Right? We all remember the Gemara about the letters emes. Right? They have a foundation. Sheker doesn't have a foundation. Right? And then it says elsewhere, Chos Moshe HaKadosh Baruch Hu emes. Right? It says in Gemara Shabbos that the Petek came down from the sky, and it says God's signature. If God, we compare, if we anthropomorphize, and if God had to sign a document or a check, his signature would be emes, because that's the embodiment of God. Hu levado ha'emes ve'ein la'acher emes ka'amitaso. There's no comparable, right? There's nothing else in existence that compares to the truth of God. V'hu Torah omeres, v'hu Torah omeres, and this is alluded to also in the Torah, ein od milvado, right? And if you remember, I think it was in Sanhedrin, in the Samichs, there was a story of the Amora who would ward off all of the black magic against him. The name escapes me at this moment. Rav Chanina, I forgot. Enod Milvado. That's our elixir. That's our way to defend against any other forces, right? If you remember in Sanhedrin, we talked about all those black magic Gemaras and Samach Dalet, Samach Hey, Samach Vav over there. So that's Enod Milvado. Okay, Klomar, Ein Sham Matsoi Emes Milvado Kamoso. There is no true existence like the existence of God. So without him, we're nothing. Hamatzoi hazehu Elokei ha'olam adon kol ha'aretz. We are continuing with halacha hey. This existence of God, again, he keeps on calling him hamatzoi, which means literally something that's common or something that's found, but it's with a capital letter because it's referring to God. Hu Elohei ha'olam adon kol ha'aretz. Okay, he is the master. This sounds like a little like a Rosh Hashanah davening, right? Elokei olam adon kol ha'aretz. V'hu ha'manhig hagalgal b'koach. So here the Rambam gets a little into metaphysics, and he says he controls what the Rambam calls the galgal. Literally means a ball or a wheel, but it's talking probably about this world, right? B'koach she'ein lo ketz v'tachlis. With koach, with strength and power that has no end. It's infinite power. B'koach she'ein lo hefsek. Oh, thank you for that. With power that has no break. It's continuously revolving. Shehagalgal sovev tamid, right? We are always in an orbit. The efshar sheyisov blo mesabe. And without someone spinning us, there's no reason why we should be spinning, right? So God is our spinner, okay, in this mashal brought down by the Rambam, but he is the one controlling our orbit. V'hu baruchu hamisabeb oto below yad below guf, and he does it without the way we would spin a dreidel, right? It's very hard for us to spin a dreidel without a hand, right? As opposed to God, who can control the earth and do everything without a body and without a hand or without a body. I wanted to just end on a bonus. We have a remarkable coincidence between yesterday's Daf Yomi, right, and this motif where the Rambam in the first 4 or 5 halachos basically said, right, no God, no dice, right? There's nothing to discuss because he's the manhig hakol, and without him, it's impossible to imagine a world that exists. And if you remember yesterday's Gemara, as luck would have it, the Gemara is looking for a source about the concept about the Bezdin paskening. I am on Daf Ches Amud Aleph on the bottom, about 6 lines from the bottom. Right, the Gemara is talking about Parsha Shlach is the source for an Avodah Zarah psak. Right, remember Parshas Vayikra is if the Bezdin paskins and they make a mistake, but if there's a specific mistake where Bezdin permits something that's controversial regarding Avodah Zarah, right? So there's a special korban that's bought. There's a special korban. It's called the Seir Avodah Zarah. Okay, and that parsha is not in Vayikra; it's in Shlach. But if you look in the Psukim in Shlach, it doesn't say the word Avodah Zarah. It doesn't say Avodas Kochavim. So the Gemara wants to know, how do you know that this whole parsha is talking about the psak din of something that's avodah zarah related. So about 5 lines from the bottom, my mashma amar Rabba v'tema Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. 4 lines from the bottom, v'amri lakadi amar kravis v'chi tishku v'lo tasu es kol hamitzvos ha'eleh. The parsha in Shlach opens up by discussing if you make a mistake and you don't do you don't do these mitzvos. So what do you mean these mitzvos? What are we talking about? So the Gemara says, Ezehi mitzvah shehi shekula kekol ha-mitzvos. What is a mitzvah that is comparable to all 613 mitzvos? Have omer zu avodas kochavim. That's referring to avodah zarah. So the Gemara doesn't explain it. Rashi on the side gives an interpretation where he says that anochi and lo yihiyeh is mipi hagvura. Okay, it's a very beautiful pshat, but why am I bringing this up? Because there's a little tiny Tosfos in very small letters. If you know, Tosfos and Horios is not your classic Tosfos. You have to go to the bottom, and it's in little tiny letters. But Tosfos wants to know, why is it that Kol HaMitzvos is Keneged Avodah Zarah, right? We know, I think that it's either 6 or 7. There are 6 things that are compared to doing the whole, if you keep Shabbos, it's like you keep the whole Torah. If you wear tzitzis, if you wear tefillin, if you don't do this, right? There are 6 or 7 examples the Gemara in many places says is Keneged all 613 commandments. But over here, we're saying that it's regarding Avodah Zarah. And the little tiny Tosfos on the bottom says, if you see it, I don't know if it's on... I don't know if Safari would have the Tosfos in Horios. That's asking a lot. But if you look in the regular classic Bavli, Tosfos says, Dekivan demodeba. I love these words. He's very, very succinct. Because if you were to admit if you were to admit to Avodah Zarah, i.e., if you serve Avodah Zarah, ma tzorach lo l'kayim kol hamitzvos. Then what are we doing here? We're wasting our time. Everything else is a moot point. If you don't build now, if you're practicing Avodah Zarah, you clearly have doubts about God's existence, right? That's I'm not going out on a limb saying that. So if that's true, then why are you wasting your time? Umistama yavor al kulan, says Tosfos. So therefore, you're going to be like the pasuk says, v'lo tasu es kol ha-mitzvos ha'eleh. It doesn't say there was a mistake made regarding some of the mitzvos. You made a mistake regarding all of the mitzvos because nothing matters anymore. If you believe in Avodah Zarah, then stop the tape. That's it. Everything else is moot. As Tosfos says, ma tzorach lo l'kayim kol ha-mitzvos. Don't give me the speech like the chilonim or the non-religious say, yeah, we don't need these mitzvos because I'm a good guy. I give charity. I honor my parents. I don't steal. I pay my taxes, right? That's the classic, secular argument. Why do I have all these crazy mitzvos about tefillin and waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and Elul? It's all a waste of time. I'll just be a good citizen. I don't need anything. We say no. If you need all of these mitzvos, because that is the ultimate existence of God. And we'll stop over there.